So I'd like to welcome everyone here today to honor Paul Fulmer and the legacy that he left here for Team Horner. One of the special reasons that we created this Hall of Fame is so that the contributions that were made from those who helped lay the foundation of the company were never forgotten. So as time goes on, people will be able to come through here and see those that have contributed in the past to make the company what it is today. Part of the criteria of being in the Hall of Fame is to be an exemplary example of a team player, as we've always tried to emulate here at Team Horner, but also making a significant contribution to the success of the team beyond their job scope, and Paul has certainly done that. I'd also like to welcome Paul's family. It's so great to see everyone here today, and thank you for making the trip out. It's just amazing. One of the other things that's great about the Hall of Fame is that not only can the children take advantage of the Dr. Bill Kent Scholarship, but also grandchildren can take advantage of the Dr. Bill Kent Scholarship. So there's opportunities there. If anyone still has some classes they want to take or whatever it is, they can apply for that scholarship, and that's just a wonderful thing all the way around. At this point, though, what I'd like to do is introduce Bill, and I know that this is a special day for him. Paul and Bill had an extremely special relationship, and I know this means a lot to him today. And so, Dr. Bill, will you take us away?
This is actually a pretty emotional day for me to see the family again. I would tell you that my first meeting with Paul Fulmer was in 1972 because I went to Riviera Pools, which was one of the large leading pool companies in Fort Lauderdale, as a salesman for Horner Equipment, and they were the first big fish that I ever landed. And a lot of it had to do with the chemistry that Paul and I had together. But it grew beyond that. I can remember numerous Sundays going out to their house in Sunrise with my little kids, we're all down like this, and spending the afternoon with Paul and Stacy and Kim and Joan, just hanging around. And it kind of helped me feel good about my move from Ohio to Florida. Then as time rolled on, I decided to build a pool in my backyard in Wilton Manors. And so my favorite picture, which is on the wall in my office, is this one. Most of you would look at that and just blow it off as, oh, well, whatever that is, it is. Well, that's 7 o'clock in the morning, Paul cutting pipe to install in the spa. I had a pool with a raised spa and an overflow back in a tiny little backyard, and he was out there because he and I kind of built the pool together with some subcontractors, but he was out there cutting pipe in the morning, and I came out the back door getting ready to go to work, and he had a donut stuck in his mouth. And one of his favorite titles was Joe Bag of Donuts. So only a few of you would know about Joe Bag of Donuts. So this is it for me personally. This captures the whole deal with Paul Fulmer. And then he got wanderlust, decided he wanted to buy a motorhome and drive all over the place. So he sold his share in Riviera Pools. And Joan, what year was that? Do you remember? The first time? Don't remember? Somewhere around 79, and it didn't last too long, 1979, and it didn't last too long, so he came back and went to work for us. He had sold his shares in Riviera and wasn't going to go back there. And so his first big assignment was, I had been trying to sell swimming pool heat pumps made by a couple of people up in Palm Beach County for a couple of years, and none of it worked out very well. One of them was a guy named Mike Drake, who maybe some of you olders would remember. Anyway, there's a huge manufacturer of air conditioners about a mile from here over on the other side of Cypress Creek Road. So I went over there and asked them if they would be interested in building a swimming pool heat pump for our company, with the idea that we would do everything else. So Paul spent about a year working with their engineers developing the first reliable swimming pool heat pump. They were a production house, so they knew how to make things right the first time, like we do at AquaCal now. And so that worked out, and Paul would basically do a lot of the sales as well as whatever service came up. Again, the volume was small, but that was how we got started in the heat pump business. And of course, that's changed the world over time. And of course, he's famous for his Malibu Racetrack visitations, and I know several of you are going to mention that, so I'll skip that one. And then probably the most fun retirement party we ever did is in that book, where we actually set up a racetrack around 5755 building, and it was on a Sunday, I think, afternoon. We had timing races going around the building. And I don't think Paul won. I think Scott won. Scott, are you here? Didn't you win? Yeah. Which irritated Paul to no end. Yeah. That's pretty good that you can remember that kind of stuff, right? I know you would remember because you won, but for me to remember it, it's got to be special. So anyway, that's that. And then, and of course, 1992, the entire company changed in terms of what was possible when, as fate would have it, both AquaCal became a part of our company, and I've learned not to try to talk through the jet blast. So, and then at literally the same time, within a month, Lectrinator became a Team Horner group event, and we bought this blue building with the primary purpose in 1992 of bringing Lectrinator from Cleveland, Ohio, down here to Fort Lauderdale. We waited till we bought it in like April, and then brought it down in October after the salt generator season was over with. And of course, Paul went to work there, and he invented the bypass manifold, which has withstood the test of time pretty significantly, although we're slowly moving away from it now with our new product lines. And then toward the end of his career here, he built the fountain that used to be over there, and Maria has the plaque somewhere. Don't you, Maria? Do you have that plaque for the fountain? Yeah, it's upstairs. It's okay that it's not here, but we still have the plaque. We had to tear the fountain down to modernize the backyard here, but that plaque is still available. And one of the other inventions that Paul's fingerprints were all over is Diamondbrite. It wasn't our business, but he worked with, who was it that he worked with? Is Laura here? Laura Costanza? Bruce, I know, I wanted her to say it. It's her dad. Paul worked with Bruce Torrance in partnership. He was working for SGM at the time, and that's how Diamondbrite got invented. Paul's classic line about Diamondbrite was, would you ever put white floor mats in a pickup truck? That's the same as putting white cement in a pool. And so he loved that comment. So I'm not going to talk too much more. What I'd like to do is we'll start with the family, and I think Stacy's going to be first up here, and then we'll see what happens next. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm much shorter than Bill. So thanks all for being here. My dad, I think he would have been really thrilled to be here and be celebrated today and to be included in the Hall of Fame and this great group of colleagues and friends like the greats when I worked here back in the late 80s, like Gary Chisling and Dan Lockwood and Tom McLeod and Skip Greggs, who I know is in here, and Scott, there's just so many people around here celebrating him, and I just think that's fantastic. Thank you all for being here, and I know that he would love to be included. What I believe is that he's still here with us, and in fact, if he was still here, he's probably standing in the back with a video camera and just video cameraing everything, because if you knew him, he always walked around with his video camera. One thing I wanted to talk about was I'm not really sure what he would have thought about the past couple of years. He's been gone for about 12 years now, a substantial hole in our lives, but it went by in a second. But I think he'd be really proud of my sister Kim and I, and how we've grown up and all the things we've accomplished. I think he'd be thrilled to know that my sister Kim married a man named Paul, who was also a pilot. So things that my dad loved, that was really awesome. I think he'd be really blown away by his 3 granddaughters. So we have Alyssa, Casey, and Caitlin back there, and how much they've accomplished in their young years so far. He would have loved just hearing everything they learned about at college, and he would have been thrilled about that. I think he would have been super proud to know that just a couple of months after he passed away, he actually won a design award for a spa that he built with his son-in-law, my ex-husband Mike, in Fort Worth. So he won a design award after that, which was really, really thrilling. And he had been working on a design for a concrete and acrylic window spa that we were putting in our backyard, and he didn't get the chance to build it, but Mike went ahead and built it in his honor. I think he would have been really proud to have seen how that came out. Also, I believe that he would have been really inspired by all of today's technology. I think that's something he would have loved about these times. I think he would have just taken advantage of all that. He probably, whatever that bypass is that he built then, he probably would have built something even better now. He probably would have won a couple of more patents. So I think the technology would have been really cool for him. And we all know how much he loved to drive. He did like to drive the little cars. He just liked to drive fast. But I think he would have been enamored with self-driving cars. I think he would have thought that was pretty cool. And I think he might have turned in his Mini Cooper for a Tesla, but now Bill has one. Maybe he would have been out taking a ride with you right now. But he would have loved that technology. If you knew my dad, one of the other things he was very passionate about was knowledge and always evolving. And I'll wait for a second. Since he was an airplane guy, he would have loved that. So he loved knowledge. He loved to always evolve and grow. And I think, Bill, he would have been so impressed to see what you've done with Horner Equipment over the years and how it has evolved as a business and a company, how it's employee owned, how you care about the employees now. I think that's really important, how you've evolved. And the fact that you yourself have gotten more knowledge and you've gotten a doctorate. You know, he was into just learning every day. If he wasn't learning something, you know, he wouldn't have been happy. He liked to learn every day. So super proud of him, miss him dearly. I do live by one of his guiding principles. I think it was his #1 guiding principle. And there's a little secret in here that some of you would personally know, but his guiding principle was be productive every day so you could earn your rewards at the end of the day. So he was all about earning his rewards. But Dad, I think you truly earned this reward. Super proud of you. Thank you, Bill, and thank you for everybody else who put this together. It's such an honor to be able to celebrate him again with all of you, and really glad that you're here. Thank you.
I didn't bring up the airplane, but there's actually 2 pictures of the airplane that Paul and I bought together in 1977. We both got pilot licenses right here at Executive Airport, and we owned that plane together for about 4 years. And then he went off on one of his motorhome missions, and so I had to find another partner. I did, but the other partner didn't do what Paul did. Paul would change the oil and check the tires, and we never had to spend a dime on maintenance because he was all over that. And we had some of the best days of my life were out just taking off at like a Saturday morning at 6:30 in the morning and flying to Okeechobee or some backwoods place, landing on a grass strip, and talking to the people. It's a real adventure, Florida. It's not just the city-fied parts of it. So anyway, there's pictures of 460 Golf was the call sign on that airplane. And then eventually I sold my half of it. That was the end of that career. So who else in the family would like to come up and talk? Nobody? I represent. Okay, all right. So this is random. A lot of you have come, and I know you'd like to speak. Peter Maitland, why don't you come up first?
Well, first of all, you must excuse this. The reason I do this is because this keeps the girls away. Okay. I had the pleasure of working with Paul for a number of years. We used to handle things differently there. First of all, Paul was always a gentleman to me, very particular. And I remember one case when we went out to a pool that he was putting together with a hidden edge. And Paul spent so much time on the edge because it overlooked a lake, and he wanted it to disappear into the lake, which meant that the tiles had to be changed on the edge, the hidden edge, about 3 times. It's amazing. But Paul was always such a gentleman too. I'd never heard him use bad language. No, he used to leave that to me. But what we used to do, of course, I worked with autopilot, and for some close to 20 years, worked with Paul all the time. Paul always handled the hydraulic side of it. He did the cells, he did the manifold, the bypass. Of course, one of the best things I think that Paul ever did was the dual pump system that he used to call it hydraulic isolation, where we used the 2 pumps to operate the spa independently of the pool and to do an automatic changeover. You hear it okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. I think we had this pointing at the aircraft. Anyway, I can tell you a lot of things about Paul. Because Paul was unconventional in a lot of ways. I can't think of anybody else that would have had a trailer and went to sleep in the trailer in our parking lot. I tell you something else that used to happen there too. Outside here, we've got the test tanks that we use to test autopilot, test the cells. Paul, when he was staying here, he used to come out at night and he used to jump into those, and that was his own private sauna. Now, of course, they're clear plastic, and he was in there one night. We have a number of feral cats around here. He was in there one night, and the shadow of the cat came around there. Now, of course, when a cat gets close to the light, it makes it much larger. So here he is in there, just enjoying himself in the sauna. He looks around, and there's this huge creature just outside. It didn't make any difference. He did it again the next night. Okay. Anyway, I think there's certain things that we'll never forget Paul for, though. The way in which he set up this building here. He was unconventional in other ways. I mean, I can't think of anybody else when he wanted a cooling tower, a water-filled cooling tower, would have used the city of Fort Lauderdale's lake, which he did. If you talk to Paul about building permits, he'd say, "What's that?" But at any rate, that's one of those things. I just want to tell you that he was always a gentleman. I always enjoyed working. We worked very well together, and I want to thank you all for coming as well, celebrating.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Peter. So who would like to go next? This is random. Come on up here, Kelly. Oh, you're going to do a duo, you and Scott? Two for one? Okay, this is going to be good.
Don't get nervous that it's 3 pages long. The font is really big because the older I get, the bigger the letters get.
Hang on, I'm going to start first because Kelly speaks much better than I do, so she's going to speak on my behalf. But Paul was very instrumental in teaching me how things actually work in the pool industry. You know, Danny taught me how to shoot from the hip. Gary taught me how to dot my I's and cross the T's. But it was Paul that really taught me how the pool industry actually worked. And Kelly can elaborate about some of our times together because we were cohorts in crime through most of it.
Except the Osterman incident. I wasn't involved in that.
I don't know anything about that one.
Scott and I met Paul when we were in our formative late teen years. So obviously we're no longer even close to being teenagers, so it was a long time ago. I knew a little bit about pools because I came from Van Kirk and Sons swimming pools when I came to Horner. But Paul knew everything. Everything. Have you ever asked someone a question, hoping and praying for a quick answer? Well, with Paul, when you asked him a question, he would ask a series of follow-up questions to you, usually between 15 and 20, until you answered your own question. I used to laugh. I'd say, don't ask Paul the time, unless you're really specific on what time zone or you want to know how a watch is made. Paul was a genius with an unbridled curiosity of everything pools. And although he spent so much time innovating several pool items, techniques, trends, and technological advances in our industry, quite a few of which are still relevant in our marketplace, today, he always made time to take us young teammates under his wing and help educate, shape, and develop us for successful careers in our industry. And for this, we will always be grateful. One day, Dan Lockwood tasked me with the assignment of helping Paul make his Horner Institute of Technology bulletins a bit more comprehensible to the common mind. Those were some of my favorite times working with Paul. What are you trying to say? I'd ask. What I wrote down was his most common response. Okay, Paul, but remember, I'm not nearly as smart as you are on this subject, so can you dumb it down a little bit for me to understand? Sometimes the process was quick and painless. Other times it would take hours. It was time I always cherished as I walked away learning something new every time. We worked on numerous videos he would produce for our cutting-edge 8mm player to be taken all over the world, educating pool people on numerous continents. I even learned how to use the little wheel in the Taylor test kit from doing those videos. And for those moments spent working together, I will always be grateful. And then there was the personal side of Paul. Still ever the instructor, whether it was instructing you how to shave your personal time at Malibu by following the line, eliminating sharp turns and curves and breaks, or when he would tell you what move you should have made and why in the last backgammon match that he just beat you at. Go-kart racing was synonymous to Paul. Heck, we even turned the Horner campus into a go-kart racetrack, complete with bales of hay and real go-karts. Although our skills did improve over time, we became most worthy opponents to our instructor, me and backgammon, Scott in the go-karts. The trips down to Malibu, the hundreds of backgammon matches, Scott and I refusing to ever give you above a C+ rating on your current crop because we knew it would drive you insane. and having interesting discussions meant so much to us. Thank you, Joan, for putting up with us kids back then. For those moments and more, we are forever grateful. Paul gave us so much more than we can ever recall in one sitting. He left an indelible mark on our industry and in our hearts. Scott and I are so very honored to be a part of this celebration today for our mentor and our dear friend. God bless you, Paul, and thanks for the memories. Oh, and by the way, you may have actually hit a B+, maybe once or twice.
Okay, who wants to go next? Rosa, all right, come on up here. I'll pull it. I'll pull it.
I really don't even know why I'm here because I am not a speaker and I never have before. And as you can see, we have a series of nominees here, but here I am. I'm happy that Kelly told you all about how to make a watch because that was one of the things I was going to mention, and I figure she will shorten my speech here. Paul was very patient. I never saw him get upset, always ready to answer any questions I had. He sat in my office, and I must admit, many times, whatever he was telling me, right over my head. I had no idea what he was talking about, but I just kept nodding, and he just kept going. So at the end, I had my answer. I found out early on that he really wanted me to understand the subject in depth before the answer. So I thank him for that because he did make me learn. When I first came here, I was told that Paul worked for Charlie's Chips Pretzels. There was a can of pretzels under his desk, and it was his can of pretzels, and he was always eating those things. I didn't even know what pretzels were back then, but I learned. I remember him and Bruce Torrance in my pool experimenting on my new pebble finish with a polisher thing. After a while, I think they gave up and went back into research and development, but they were there. I'm not only thankful for having met Paul, but also Joan and their daughters, Stacy and Kim. Joan was there to show me the ropes when I first arrived at Horner. Stacy will take care of my children while I attended our monthly staff meetings, and they love her. Joan opened her beautiful home and officiated and planned for my wedding back in 1985. I'm not going to say what wedding number this was, just for your information. In closing, I will say that as many of you know, Paul was a forward thinker. But did you know that way back then, Paul had his very own version of spell check and autocorrect? Of course, they weren't called spell check and autocorrect back then. These features and others were bundled and called Joan. She would carefully review, type, rearrange, spell check, format, and correct all of Paul's manuscripts to create all the technical bulletins that will be then printed and distributed to many of you, called Hint Book. Paul was, without question, one of my mentors, and I'm honored to be here today.
Okay, Tom McLeod, come on up here, buddy. Was that 1983 or 1984? Two.
I came to Horner after 12 years with the Gunite crew and started working for Horner in 5 different warehouses across the street. That's where I met Joan and Paul in customer service. Joan teaching me the ropes on how to put things in the computer, and Paul, just a wealth of knowledge. Amazing. I had to go to him many times to understand anything that I came about. And we had HIT classes that he collaborated with, and I was doing one of the classes as a teacher, and of course he's videotaping, and I was getting through with it pretty well until a guy in the audience asked me a question. It was having to do with a field question, and Paul was very knowledgeable in that respect, and he kind of came to my rescue to save the day for me, and without any embarrassment, he took over and answered that question for me. That was really nice of him to do that, and he was such a kind person, such a knowledgeable person, and an intellectual person to me. Seemed like he was like uppity and full of himself. Paul was never like that, never. He would always sit down with you if you had a question and explain to you, even though in the beginning of the answer, it went right over your head, just like Rosa said. And he did a hint book also, which stands for Horner Institute of Noteworthy Technology. And he compiled that with all his illustrations, all his hints and tricks of the trade, even gathering information from other customers that contributed to that book. Also, as far as his videotaping, we come to know him as Captain Video because he was everywhere with that video camera. Paul made me a better person. I learned so much from him, and anyone could go to him for answers, even though it took a while to get the answers from him. But I sure do miss him, and I really appreciated his friendship as well as his knowledge. Thank you.
Okay, who's next? Gary.
You know, it's pretty obvious for those of us who knew Paul to recognize all his qualities, because some of this stuff is obviously repeated, and including something that Ron Burr, who wasn't able to make it today, asked me to read for this event. So he says, as we think about Paul, all of us in the industry should say thank you for the many ideas which are linked to the creative thinking of Paul Fulmer. Just a couple of his many contributions to our industry include pool and spa heat pumps, exposed aggregate finishes, microphone listening device for locating pool leaks, SLAM system of check valves for pool and spa control. That was one that I kind of forgot about. The entire Horner Institute of Noteworthy Technology, the hint book. The hint book had so many things to mention, but it is a very valuable tool to everyone in this industry. Paul was also instrumental in the construction of the 57-55 building, overseeing the entire construction process. One of my favorite memories of Paul was a company gathering at his house in Jacaranda, in Plantation. Paul was very proud of his pool. He was very proud of his pool, spa, and the entire backyard oasis. It was truly a job well done by him. Paul was always available to answer any questions during my time at Horner, always willing to educate and enlighten on any given subject. Our industry would not be the same today without many of Paul Fulmer's ideas which he brought to fruition. His induction into the Horner Hall of Fame is certainly a well-deserved honor. Thank you, Ron Burr from Right Way Pools. So I think we would all also agree that Paul was one of a kind. I mean, if you were going to sum up Paul, you would definitely agree that he was one of a kind. He was inquisitive about most anything, more so about things that were technical or mechanical in nature, and not just swimming pool related. A byproduct of his curiosity was that Paul was extremely innovative. Heat pumps, pool finishes, underwater windows, etc. Paul also enjoyed teaching. When you ask, you've heard this already today, when you asked Paul a question, you didn't get an answer, rather multiple questions that led you down the path of finding the answer yourself. When Paul retired in the mid-90s, what better way to celebrate than his last lap party? Driving go-karts around the 57-55 building, the building that has his fingerprints in every phase of its construction. And I'll tell you that frequently, Mark was out here, but going back in time, Mark and I, we have plans to the building, and we'd have an issue, and we'd try to look at the plans and figure something out. But invariably, we'd always, when we couldn't figure it out, we would say, I'll bet you Paul knows the answer to that, because he knew this building very intimately. I remembered writing a poem, which I didn't know was going to be here, for the last lap party. And I found the poem, and I was going to share it, even though it's here today. The poem touches on many of the things, some of which have already been said, but were obviously Paul 100%. And it's dated June of 1996, and it's titled A Tribute to Paul Fulmer. We salute this man, Paul Fulmer is his name, to roast and toast his claims to fame. Pools have been his life for 30+ years, dedicated to teach us all and always sincere. He has dabbled with heat pumps, many brands at that. For this we must recognize and tip our caps. And several patents, which Paul would invent, got approval from Bill. It was money well spent. How about those hint bulletins describing virtues and schemes? Those were Paul's words. They appear to be endless, or so it seems. Instrumental in starting the hit classes we teach, meritorious synopsis was part of his speech. A conversation with Paul will reveal all kinds of new stuff, from BTUs to recipes. Enough is enough. Captain Video is a nickname Team Horner gave Paul. Let's video it, you could hear down the hall. Sports he's not fond of, for he's not very athletic, but put him in a race car and he makes others look pathetic. Paul loves to race those Malibu cars. No matter where he is at, a track is never too far. Proud as can be of his beat-up Scirocco, he insists on keeping it. He must be wacko. His favorite meal is McDonald's and Coke. I kid you not, this is not a joke. Charlie chip pretzels can also be found around Paul's desk, mound after mound. Some chosen words you'll often hear him say are really and well any time of the day. He decided to retire when Richard Petty called it quits, but soon changed his mind to make one final blitz. A few more laps is the analogy he would use. To have it his own way, I can't lose. He recently received a Team Synergy Award, which he can now hang on his Winnebago dashboard. You know we will miss you. You are creative and unique with those cementitious thoughts each day of the week. So to you and Joan, a happy sabbatical. Stay out of danger, don't do anything too radical. And that was in June of 1996 when we had our final lap party. So as you can see, Paul's been pretty instrumental in our industry, and it's an honor to, even as an inductee myself into the Hall of Fame, to include Paul, and it's definitely a well-deserved honor. Thank you.
Okay, who wants to go next? Mr. Tawney drove over here from St. Petersburg to be here today.
Thank you, and I'm very happy to be here. I came up, and one of the first things I was going to say about Paul was that he was one of the most amazing learners as far as the capacity and the desire. But I've also recognized after listening to everybody else that has spoke previously, not only was he a learner, but more importantly, he was a teacher. And he took what he knew and he passed it on, and he affected a lot of lives and a lot of outcomes of Team Horner. When I met him, I was just making my transition from the HVAC industry into the pool industry. Knew a little bit about refrigeration and heat pumps, didn't know anything about pools. And our products kind of reflected that in the early days. There were a lot of challenges with how it interacted and integrated into the pool system, and the solutions we eventually came up with, from internal bypasses with spring check valves and backflow prevention devices. Those were instrumental in AquaCal ultimately being successful as a product category, and Paul's fingerprints were all over that indeed. So he was a big mentor to me. A lot of people have mentioned some of his accomplishments, from product innovation. We had the ATV, we did the pool spa switch, we did the hydraulic isolation. He convinced me that, I don't know why you want to use a flow switch on these heat pumps. Gas heaters have been using pressure switches forever, and that was a huge improvement in quality. Just absolute wealth of knowledge, and happy to share it. One of the things I noticed about Paul early on was he was extremely intense and calm at the same time. It was really hard to describe, but he was extremely intense. And Kelly described how he would ask questions rather than give you answers, and I picked up on that pretty quick too. So he was just a born learner and a born teacher, and we as a group we as a group making up this company have all benefited from that. Paul and I had a lot of fun whenever I came to town from Tampa, St. Pete. His instructions were to me was just make sure you give me a half an hour notice so I can meet you at Malibu. And the same when he would come to the factory in St. Petersburg. He'd give me an hour notice, and we'd meet at the Malibu. And some of the videos of him racing, I took a lot of those because he wanted to analyze every turn and every straightaway and make sure that he did it as perfectly as possible. And he held a track record in Tampa for years. Nobody beat his record. I don't know even if that place is still open, but for as long as I knew and was still going out there, Paul held a record. So, and we had a lot of fun together besides that. Early on, my origins are, excuse me, a very small town in Ohio, and I moved to Florida, and I moved to Tampa or lived in Tampa in that time when I met Paul in the mid-'80s or early '80s. And Tampa was still a small town. It wasn't a city. So one of my first experiences with a big city was a pool show that was in San Francisco. And I don't remember what year that was, but it had to be in the mid-'80s. 1984. So I was only in the business for 3 years. I was out there with my partner, Winton Goodchild, and we were doing the show out there, and we ended up spending some time with Paul, and we were in, I don't know, I think it was a hotel lobby or bar, and having some drinks, and Winton got a little too many drinks in him, and Paul helped me get him up to his room, and we were deciding we were going to go out maybe to a bar or something after we got Winton settled. And while I'm dealing with Winton, Paul's on the phone book. And I got to know more about this story because I didn't know there was more to it. But he gets in the phone book while we're in the hotel room, and he looks up a Joe Bag of Donuts. And there's a guy in the phone book named Joe Bag of Donuts. Paul calls the guy. 45 minutes later, we're at the guy's house drinking. Pardon? Your brother. I never got that. So there's a lot more to the story. I don't know. But like I said, my first big city experience, I was just getting to know Paul, and it was an amazing, amazing encounter. So we had a lot of fun. I also helped him work with, and Peter told the story of him hopping in the tanks over here, but he had a portable knockdown spa to go with that RV as well. And I would find him when he would park his RV at AquaCal in the parking lot many times, sitting in that spa in the evening. It's like, dude, he was committed. He was committed. So Paul was special to me. He was special to our company and our industry. And this honor couldn't be more fitting for another individual. So congratulations, Paul. Thank you.
Okay. Jimmy, come on up here, buddy.
I'm not going to miss an opportunity not to be behind the microphone.
I know. Get your no-dos out.
Oh, man. I was not expecting to speak today, but something popped in my head while I was sitting here thinking about times with Paul. When I came on board back in '93, Paul took myself underneath his wing and my buddy Matthew, and he was just a cool dude. He was knowledgeable. I respected him. He was fun. Like I said, as he took me underneath his wing, we'd go to some job sites and actually went out of state one time. We flew up north to go visit one of his projects, and he and I were on the plane, and on the way back, I was like, Paul, I really have to hit the bathroom. He said, oh, me too, really bad. I said, okay, Paul. So we go ahead, we jump off the plane, we run to the closest bathroom, we run inside, I'm inside the stall, he's in the stall. I said, hey, Paul, are the walls pink in your stall? And he's like, yeah, Jimmy, they are. I said, Paul, we're in the women's bathroom, man. I said, but let's wrap it up and get out of here quick. By the time we hit the exit door, security was coming in. And I just had to share that little blip with you. He was a cool dude.
Next. Danny, come on up here, buddy.
Well, nice to see everybody here, and thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to see you. I was in the back, of course, I can't shut up, and I said, she worked there, she worked there, she worked there, her husband worked there. It's kind of amazing how the family is grown and still back here. And everything people said, needless to say, we all could say. But I was sitting there saying, what the hell am I going to say? I'm going to talk about the economic impact Paul put in our company. I'm amazed that there's not the 5 or 6 big pool builders in town that Paul has made filthy rich because of his slam systems and his innovations with Diamondbrite. And the guy would have in the back of a thing, he'd have a torch to take stains out of the finish by burning them out with a blowtorch. Oh, who the hell thinks of that, right? And it was, for me, I didn't, Paul and I have personalities were this far different. I have an attention span of an ant, and he has one of an elephant. But however, when customers wanted to ask me something about a pool, I said, look, all I can do is tease you, but I can get Paul to please you. And it was a combination that apparently worked. And Jimmy's story was awesome, but my story was when we used to go to lunch occasionally, and he'd bring a cigar box. In the restaurant, he'd start rolling cigarettes. I said, you son of a bitch. I said, we're going to get, somebody's going to call. Nobody ever called, but he liked to push the edge, as you guys know, his wives and kids, and Bill's, he said he could beat Bill's Z car with his Scirocco, and if you ever took a ride with Paul, hang on. I mean, we came back from Miami Traders meeting or something, and we were on the big turn. We made it. That's all I know is we made it. And a unique individual. I'm going to shut up, but I have one word about Paul. Paul was priceless in my life. That's all I got.
Lars, Matthew, somebody? Are we finished? Are we finished? Last call. Okay, Joan, Tim, Stacy, we have a plaque for you. Come on up. And it didn't rain.